Welcome back to the show, everybody. Today we're joined by Ryan Sullivan, who's the founder at Off the Beaten Path Financial. Welcome to the podcast, Ryan. And as we kick off here, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and what you guys are doing over at Off the Beaten Path Financial?
Yeah, well, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you having me on. And yeah, so my background's a little unique. I started off as a mechanical engineer, and I did that for a while. And then I actually started an engineering department at a mechanical plumbing contractor. And I built that up to a good sized team. I basically got to kind of start and run my own little engineering firm inside of an existing company. That experience kind of influenced heavily, obviously what I do now and types of clients I work with. But along the way, I've always been really interested in investing in markets and finance, business. So I actually, I met a financial advisor at the store randomly, and he used to be an engineer, and we really hit it off. And he was a big catalyst for me eventually going down this path. And so we kind of met up periodically for a drink, lunch, whatever it was, for about 2 years before I really decided, like, hey, I think I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to become a financial advisor. And so that was a big part of kind of my journey. But ultimately, launched Off the Beaten Path Financial, and I've got a strong background in the investment side and have kind of a unique approach there that I call dynamic investing. But really, beyond that, offer comprehensive planning. Kind of get into all areas with clients between cash flow, tax planning, looking at their insurance, estate, but really it's about helping them live with no limits and really understanding what are their goals today, tomorrow, and down the road, and how can we align their finances and their strategy to ultimately achieve that. Another big thing too that I do that's kind of unique is we also do a lot of business planning. And so a lot of our clients are business owners, especially in the architecture, engineering, construction space. And with my background in that, I do a lot as far as helping people improve their business, improve profitability, ultimately get to a place where they can sell it. And so I like being able to help people make more money and then help them figure out how best to grow that or how best to use it.
That's great. And I saw on your website you have, it looks like a free ebook, the Download the Wealth Blueprint, the Architect and Engineer's Guide to Financial Peace, Confidence, and Abundance. And as you just mentioned, those are specific industries. Would any other industries benefit from seeing this, or do you just keep it tight with your focused industries?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of financial stuff is, applicable kind of across the board to different industries. I just have a background in engineering and in the EAC world, and so that's kind of where I focus a lot of my marketing and a lot of who I work with. But I also have a lot of clients that fall outside that, and so I think that a lot of the stuff I talk about in that wealth blueprint guide are applicable, for really anyone. And that walks through my wealth blueprint system, which is how I engage with most of my clients on the personal finance side. And so that kind of shows my framework. There's those three pillars of achieving financial peace, building financial confidence, and then ultimately experiencing financial abundance. And so within those, there's kind of three steps that we take. And that's how we think about working through someone's financial situation and really looking at kind of more of that holistic, comprehensive view.
That's great. And when you meet new customers, is it referrals or is it the industry, or what goes through the mind of a new customer where they say, I need to reach out to Ryan, and like what does that look like? Like if you're not necessarily looking for new customers, but like how do new customers find you when you know it's going to be a good fit?
Most of my clients come from social media. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, also post on Instagram and Facebook. I do a little bit on YouTube. But so a lot of them have come from that sort of presence. And then I've also gotten pretty involved in different sort of groups, organizations within that architecture, engineering, construction space. And so I've been a presenter. I've been a keynote speaker. I've done a lot of webinars. I'm a business coach with what's called the Entre Architect Network, which is a group of small architecture firm owners. And so I've gotten engaged with a lot of these sort of communities or organizations that lend itself both to my background experience, but also benefit from getting some financial education and support and resources on that front. And so, people trickle in from referrals and other things as well. But that's been kind of the main focus. Is a driver for me in this whole journey was, I had to figure all this out myself, and I didn't feel like the industry or my job or whatever really provided much education. School is a big one too. There was no financial classes. No one taught you how to do taxes. No one taught you how to invest or any of this stuff. And so I wanted to be a resource for people and put that out there of different strategies or raise awareness or just educate people on how best to think about things. And so that's a lot of been my approach. And so I put a lot of stuff, similar to this podcast, out there. And that's kind of naturally led to people finding me. And then, I have a little bit different approach. I called my firm Off the Beaten Path for a reason. And so I live in a unique spot. I live in the mountains in Montana, in the middle of nowhere. And so everything that I kind of do is a little bit, unique or a little bit different path than kind of the traditional approach. And that attracts people that appreciate that and that recognize it. And so a lot of times when people reach out to talk with me, they already have an idea about what I'm about, how I do things, and that's something that's attracted them.
I have to ask, there's a popular TV show about Montana. So my question is, are you locals only? Like industry specific, but you're in Montana, or is it like regional? Like do you have a radius of like your clients? And also, are transplants okay?
Well, if we're talking about my business, I work with clients all over the country. And so part of my vision for this business and what I wanted to do was for me to be able to live wherever and have that flexibility, but be able to work with people across the board. And so, Montana is full. So there is that as far as, moving here. But beyond that, it's a great place to vacation or check out. But no, I'll work with clients, all over.
That's great. Yeah. And then the other thing is what you do at Off the Beaten Path, but I'm sure you have a robust partnership network. So are there any types of partnerships where, at the edge of what you can handle or what you specialize in, but then, in addition to potential clients listening to this, are there any types of partnerships out there that you're looking to talk to? For example, licensed professionals, lawyers and CPAs and other aspects that may have like edge cases or overlap for some of your bigger customers.
Yeah, I would say probably the big ones are, taxes, lawyers, legal, big one, insurance. I have some partners that I work with a little bit across the board there, but always looking for good partners there, especially ones that also, have a lot of experience working with firms or people in the architecture, engineering, construction space. And, I think for a lot of business owners and clients and people I talk to, they look to their CPA or tax preparer as someone that's going to provide all these great tax strategies and help them figure these things out. And in my experience and talk to a lot of tax people as well as other financial advisors, that's not really what they do typically. There are exceptions, like you can definitely find firms that do that. But a lot of times that kind of more forward looking proactive tax planning falls on someone like myself that's looking at that from kind of the holistic client's perspective. And so there's an opportunity there for me, to work hand in hand with the tax preparer, with the CPA. And I think that relationship can be really valuable for the client as well as for us, as business owners. But I think that's a common sort of misconception that people don't fully realize. And a lot of times they're frustrated with not getting as much out of their accountant as they might hope. So that's kind of a big one I see. On the legal side, I have one or two contacts there, but would love to meet and know more, business attorneys, people that focus on that, getting into more sort of entity structure and things where people have some more complexity with multiple businesses and different things. And how do we best structure that from a legal perspective, from a tax perspective? And so those types of things can be valuable to work through with other professionals. And so in general, I kind of see myself as like the quarterback a lot of times, or maybe the architect, if you will, that's bringing in these different consultants, these different professionals in different capacities that have, more specific expertise in these areas. But I kind of like to be the main point of coordination with the client because I'm thinking about and looking at things from a very holistic perspective. And so it's a pretty common situation where you have someone that optimizes for one thing, what that comes at the sacrifice of maybe other areas, right? And so my whole approach is really about helping you live your best life, helping you achieve your dreams. And so we want to make sure that everything is working in parallel to ultimately support those bigger ambitions.
Yeah, well said. And yeah, every customer is a puzzle, a unique challenge, and it's
Mhm.
good to listen and really say, okay, to solve for this puzzle, I'm going to have to quarterback in the right partners, and it's good to have a deep bench. Are you leveraging AI in your work, including marketing? Do you see in your field, are you playing with AI? Are you really leveraging it? And like, just kind of curious about your trends with the new technology on the edge.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been a pretty active user of ChatGPT for a while now, and so I use that a lot for a lot of my content and copy and stuff. And so if I'm writing a social media post or my website or miscellaneous things like that, I use that. And then I've also started using it more to help with client situations, or really just have conversations with me to open my eyes to kind of different ideas or different concepts. And then obviously filter all of that and refine it. It's not just like, hey, do this work for me, but it's like helping me find answers quicker, and helping filter through large amounts of data information. And then more recently, I'm in the process of implementing a new sort of CRM, or really just kind of hub for my whole business and operation. And that's AI native and kind of built around AI at the center point. And so I'm pretty excited about that, because it's going to allow me to bring in basically all of the information that I have about a client and our conversations and history and all of that. And especially, at a certain point when you're working with a lot of clients, it's hard to remember or keep, every single little detail, front of mind, especially when you might go months in between, meeting with someone. And so having tools like that, I think, are going to be really powerful to be able to not forget things to a certain extent, right? But like consistently take things back to what's most important, and pull in, bits of information from the past and prior conversations and all of that. So,
Yeah, I've been using call summaries, and it's
mhm.
the note taker, so to speak, but it has action items and intelligence, and like it really is, it works wonders. Do you have like an outlook over the next 12 months, maybe even 5 years, like trends you're seeing that and also just the direction you want to take your business?
I mean, the big one, related kind of to the AI question, is just that, where do we go from here, right? I mean, AI in general has developed, seems like, overnight to a certain extent, or very quickly over the last 2 years. And it's obviously continuing to accelerate. And that's not going to slow down really ever, right? And so a lot of what I've seen in the past and even more recently kind of has talked about this 2030 has a potential singularity point, both economically, financially, AI, etc. And so to me, it's kind of a black box on the other side of that, because I don't think as humans we can really comprehend too much about what that looks like when we're on the other side of it. I think that, I mean, 2030 is really not that far away. And people are already starting to kind of make comments about some of the current AI tools now about approaching, some sort of singularity or some AGI level or things like that. And so it makes it hard to, I don't know, plan too far in the future. I mean, I haven't really let that change the way I'm thinking about stuff when I am planning for people's retirement, or, 10, 20 years down the future. I mean, I think there's a level of sort of financial structure, and, having kind of a well balanced overall kind of asset portfolio between different places, and types of assets that you hold, that will be valuable when we get to a place like that. But beyond that, it's so difficult to sort of comprehend or predict, that I don't know that there's really anything super tangible you can do today outside of trying to prepare yourself however you can. And so having more money is better than less. Being
Right.
more prepared is better than less. There's a reason I live in the middle of nowhere, And so setting yourself up to be able to sort of withstand whatever might come from that. More in the short term, I do think, I mean, you're going to see, I mean, AI is absolutely taking away a lot of entry level jobs and things. I've talked to a few people that said like there's really no reason for them to hire an intern anymore, because they can just have AI do that. Entry level jobs similar. Like if you don't have a certain skill set, or you aren't able to think at a certain level, you're sort of being replaced. And I think that that is currently happening, and it's also happening faster than people probably fully realize. And when you have this whole segment of the population that suddenly doesn't have, like, they can't get work because they don't have the experience, and there's no reason for anyone to really hire them, it really starts to mess with society as a whole. So I think we very much have some pretty significant challenges coming our way of how we're going to navigate that. And again, it's happening so fast that government and regulation, etc., policies can't keep up with it. And so I don't really know. And so when I think about investing, I think about what I'm doing. I focus on what can I control? What does the next 3 to 12 months look like? And how do we plan and prepare for that? And so obviously there's some long-term planning going on. And at the end of the day, more is better, prepared is better, but we can only control so much. And so what can we do now to help put ourselves in the best possible position that allows us the most flexibility so that regardless of what happens, we have more control over our own lives and our own decisions versus being forced into a situation that we maybe wouldn't like.
Yeah, yeah, well said. And yeah, if the singularity AGI is achieved in this is what February 2026. It's kind of wild to say that a 5-year plan gets you to 2030. We're in the back half of the decade. How do you make a 20-year plan when singularity is in 5 years from it?
Hmm.
And again, it's AI is a mega trend. What do you think about? Do any of your customers, clients, and yourself, do you have any opinions on the debasement trade, gold, silver, and even Bitcoin? Not crypto, but Bitcoin. Do you see that in a positive light? Are you allowed to talk about it as a commodity, or it's okay if not? But I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pro crypto, pro Bitcoin for a while. Um, I mean, I think personally, I first bought it in 2020, but
Mhm.
looked at it and probably should have bought it in 2017 in the prior cycle. So that's something that I work with my clients on. A lot of advisors, you kind of hinted at, stay away from that, but I think it's an important part of your portfolio. And like I said before, a lot of changes are coming, and whether you fully understand or fully agree with Bitcoin or any of that, it, it can be an important part of sort of an overall plan and strategy. And as far as debasement goes, I mean, that's been happening for quite a while now. It's only now recently been sort of named the debasement trade. I think that especially with silver recently, there's a little bit other things going on there. Yeah, they're going to print money. And so they've been printing money since, 08, 09, when they figured out, hey, we can just print money to solve a lot of these problems. They really figured that out in 2020 during COVID, and it was like, man, this is cool. We just print money and everything works. And so that's not stopping. Like once you sort of unleashed that, like you can't put the genie back in the bottle, right? And so yeah, anything precious metals, crypto, things that respond well to that, hard assets, anything that has that scarcity factor, I think are an important part of an overall investment strategy. So I kind of have an interesting take on real estate to a certain extent, just because a lot of people look to that as another hard asset or buying land. But if we end up in a world, I kind of think about the Matrix, right? If we have these virtual environments that are so real, and what does the real world bring when the virtual world is just as good, if not better? And so we're doing this virtually. Back in the day, a few years ago, you used to meet in person to do podcasts, right? And you wouldn't be able to work in a place like this. And so many things have opened the door to your location, and geographically doesn't matter as much. And so I think that that is an interesting thing to sort of consider when you think about real estate. Like, obviously, they're not making more land unless we go to Mars and the moon and stuff. But, there's also potentially less demand. We have declining demographics, declining population. And so that influences that as well. So, what truly is scarce? And I mean, Bitcoin is one of the few things that is literally programmed and meant to be truly scarce. And so, again, these are all important things to consider and kind of factor into your overall investment strategy.
Absolutely. And would you say that in Montana, your customer profile is the being sovereign to be self-sufficient? This is, the ethos of people. Like, I think there seems to be a correlation with Bitcoin hard assets, right? And bearer instruments, self-custody.
Yeah, I think, I mean, to be fair, I don't know that I have too many clients that would say stuff like that, but there are a few, and I do think that that's something that I believe strongly in. Kind of that sovereignty aspect, and that's been sort of an underlying reason why I've done a lot of things personally. And I think that that's one of the few ways that people can protect themselves from some of these unknowns. And so, to me, that doesn't mean it doesn't mean you have to live in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't mean you have to put 100% of your assets into Bitcoin. It doesn't mean you have to do anything to an extreme, but it does mean that there's a big difference between 0 and 1. And, having a little bit of this and a little bit of that is a big difference than having nothing. And so that lends itself to how can you support yourself financially, with food, with security, with different things. Like there's lots of different layers of that. And so that is how I think about it. Some of my clients, we've talked about it, we've gotten into that, but I think a lot of people don't think that way. And that's not something that I'm necessarily going to push on someone just because in some circles that is a little bit of an extreme view. But I do think with where things are headed, that's a very important thing to consider and to think about.
Absolutely. Oh, and coming back to what you said earlier, connectivity. Do you have Starlink where you are? Is
I
that
do. Yep.
Yeah, I remember I was in I think Clubhouse during the pandemic. It was like 2020, and there was like a real estate group chat where they were talking about mountaintop real estate, how it was never viable. But then it's like with Starlink, you could be on a Zoom or a podcast from your remote, whether it's on the top of the mountain or halfway up the hill, whatever. But
Mhm.
it changes things, and the connectivity is, yeah, having that as an option very much changes your location.
Yeah, it's a game changer. I mean, like, there's no way that we would have been able to live here or would have even considered it, even maybe 5 years ago, but definitely, 10 plus. And so between Starlink, between different technologies, I mean, the guy that built this house, this property, did it in the late 70s. And to think about what that would have required to live out here, I mean, even just things as simple as like Gore-Tex, and like waterproof clothing, right? Like we get a lot of snow. And so to have feet and feet and feet of snow and to try to live up here and transportation wise, right? Like it's become so much easier due to technology and different things. And so when I think about the accessibility of high speed internet, I think about self driving cars and the ability to totally change how you think about transportation and also location. I think about the desirability of potentially nature and being in certain places. But how so when I'm going back to the real estate piece, I just think that it's not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's going to be very different, right? Like different things are going to be desirable in different ways. And you saw this during, COVID in Montana, especially. There's tons of people that moved here from New York or California, and because they wanted more space, right? And so that was a huge catalyst, but they also could work. And so fiber optics, Starlink, remote internet, etc., have all opened the door to that even being possible. So again, I think there's a lot of changes like that. And if you're not paying attention, like, you're going to be left behind. That's kind of the big thing. And so having some strategy, some at least thought about how you're thinking about these things and how you're going to handle different situations is key.
Yeah. No, this is great. It sounds like you have a good eye out for trends and what's happening and meeting customers where they are. If it's for them, sounds good. Happy to share more. If not, if they're not into certain things. Before we wrap up here, where's the best, Ryan, this has been a pleasure. Where's the best place for people to find you? We'll put stuff in the show notes, but if someone wanted to have a call with you, meet you, what's the easiest way to get in touch?
Yeah, I mean, website's a great place to start. So it's obpfinancial.com for Off the Beaten Path Financial. And then, like I said, I'm pretty active on social media. So LinkedIn's probably the best place. You can find me at Ryan Sullivan PE, and then Instagram, Ryan Sullivan PE, are probably the best places.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for your time. Great to hear your story, your perspective. Montana is full. I like that. But come visit.
Oh, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Thank you.